Somewhere in the 1950s, a psychiatrist named Aaron Beck sat with patients who were not responding to the dominant therapy of the era. They came back week after week, still trapped, still suffering, not because their circumstances were impossible, but because of the stories they were telling themselves about those circumstances. Beck began to notice a pattern. The pain was real, but the thoughts driving it were often distorted, automatic, and unchallenged. That observation would eventually reshape modern psychology, and it had a philosophical ancestor that was already 2,000 years old. Here is the question worth sitting with today. How did a philosophy born in ancient Athens, refined in Rome, and practiced by a runaway slave and an emperor, become a foundation for one of the most clinically tested approaches to mental health in the modern world? The answer tells us something important about the nature of suffering, judgment, and what is actually within our reach. The Stoic school, as the source record confirms, originated in the Hellenistic period of ancient Greece and carried forward well into the Roman imperial period. Its core project was practical: daily self-discipline, moral improvement, and what the Stoics called living a well-reasoned life. The universe, they argued, operated according to logos, a kind of governing reason threading through all things. Virtue, properly understood, meant aligning your own reasoning with that larger order. The philosophy was never meant to live only in lecture halls. It was built to be tested against the hardest moments a person could face. But the Stoics did not stay abstract for long. Their philosophy was built for the pressures of actual life. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no control over where he lived, who owned him, or what physical suffering came his way. What he developed, from within those constraints, was a precise distinction that sits at the very heart of Stoic thought: the difference between what is up to us and what is not. To paraphrase Epictetus's Enchiridion, our judgments, intentions, desires, and aversions belong to us. Everything outside that interior territory, including the body, reputation, property, and the opinions of others, does not. This is not a counsel of passivity, it is a counsel of precision. Do not spend the energy you actually have on terrain you cannot govern. Marcus Aurelius, writing privately in what became his Meditations, returned to this idea repeatedly. He was not composing a book for publication. He was talking himself down from the demands of an empire that required everything and promised almost nothing in return. He wrote, as a paraphrase of his recurring theme, that the quality of your life is determined not by what happens to you, but by what you make of it in your own mind. That is not optimism. It is discipline applied to perception, and crucially, he had to keep reminding himself of it day after day, which tells us something honest about how difficult the practice actually is. Now hold that beside what Aaron Beck discovered in the mid-20th century. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, rests on a deceptively simple premise. Our emotions are not produced directly by events. They are produced by our interpretations of events. Between the stimulus and the feeling sits a thought, often rapid and automatic. If you can identify that thought, examine it, and test it against reality, the grip of the feeling can loosen. Not vanish, but loosen. Beck did not build CBT by reading the Stoics, but Albert Ellis, who developed a parallel approach called rational emotive behavior therapy in the same era, was explicit about the connection. Ellis pointed directly to Epictetus as a philosophical predecessor. The lineage is not metaphor, it is documented intellectual inheritance. This is the surprising part of the story. We tend to think of ancient philosophy and modern medicine as entirely separate enterprises. Philosophy asks how to live. Medicine treats what is broken. But for the Stoics, the line was always blurry. The soul, in their framework, could fall into disorder just as the body could. And just as you would not leave a broken bone untreated, you should not leave a distorted judgment untreated. The philosopher in the Stoic tradition functioned as a kind of physician of the mind. That framing is not incidental. It shaped how Stoic teachers approached their students and how those students were expected to approach themselves. CBT operationalized that metaphor. It gave it structure, clinical trials, measurement, and replication. Decades of research have since identified CBT as an effective treatment for depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and a range of other conditions. The philosophy became medicine not by accident, but because the underlying mechanism, the examination and correction of automatic thought, was sound enough to survive scientific scrutiny. Now, why is this hard? Because the distance between knowing the principle and living it is enormous. When your manager dismisses your work in a meeting, when a relationship ends, when a diagnosis arrives, the automatic thought does not wait politely for you to apply philosophy to it. It moves first, fast, and with conviction. The Stoics never pretended otherwise. Marcus Aurelius did not write his meditations because he had mastered equanimity. He wrote them because he had not, and he needed to keep returning to the practice. To paraphrase a central idea from Epictetus's Enchiridion, progress in Stoic philosophy is measured not by certainty, but by the degree to which you stop blaming external things for your distress. That is honest. It does not promise invulnerability. It promises a direction. So here is how the practice actually works across a day. In the morning, before the noise begins, take 2 minutes to identify one thing that is likely to challenge you today. Name the external event. Then name the interpretation you are likely to attach to it automatically. Not to eliminate the feeling, but to see the thought before it runs. This is what CBT practitioners call cognitive rehearsal, and what the Stoics called preparation for adversity. Same mechanism, different vocabulary. The act of naming the thought before it arrives gives the mind a fraction more distance when the event actually occurs. In the middle of the day, when the friction arrives, use a single question as a pause. Is this in my control, or is it in the territory that does not belong to me? If it belongs to you, decide. If it does not, observe your reaction and let it pass through without becoming your identity. The goal is not detachment. The goal is accuracy. You are sorting reality rather than resisting it. In the evening, spend 3 minutes reviewing the day as a Stoic practitioner would. Where did your judgment hold? Where did it fall into distortion? Not self-punishment, but honest audit. This is the evening review Marcus Aurelius practiced, a quiet accounting of how closely the day's choices matched the person he intended to be. Both the Stoic tradition and CBT-informed practice treat this kind of review not as criticism, but as recalibration. Over weeks, something shifts. Not your circumstances, not the behavior of other people. What shifts is the gap between event and reaction. That gap, initially almost invisible, starts to widen by a fraction of a second, then a breath, then a full pause. In that pause lives the possibility of a chosen response, rather than an automatic one. CBT research calls this metacognitive awareness. The Stoics called it the governing faculty, the part of you that can observe its own thoughts. Both traditions agree, it can be trained. Zoom out for a moment. What ties Stoicism to CBT at the deepest level is not technique. It is a shared claim about human nature. Both traditions argue that we are not simply at the mercy of events, biology, or history. We are also participants in how we interpret and respond to those events. That is neither a denial of real suffering nor a demand for constant strength. It is an invitation to locate the one territory that is genuinely yours, the quality of your own judgment, and to take that territory seriously. The ancient Stoics believed the universe moved according to reason. We may not share that cosmology, but the practical core, that virtue lies in reasoning well about what is and is not yours to govern, has survived every century since because it works. Beck's patients discovered it in a clinical setting. Epictetus discovered it in captivity. Marcus Aurelius discovered it under the weight of an empire that kept catching fire. What they all found is that the question is not whether hard things will arrive. They will. The question is which faculty you bring to meet them. To paraphrase the central insight of Epictetus's Enchiridion, it is not events that disturb us, but the judgments we place upon them. CBT made that idea measurable. The Stoics made it livable. And both traditions are, in the end, pointing at the same door. The door has always been there. What changes with practice is your willingness to reach for it before the feeling reaches you first. Stoicism, Master your judgments. Practice what is yours to control.